how many flying creatures? A related issue arises concerning the flying creatures. Many Christians assume that Noah took only 7 pairs of clean birds. The justification for this often comes from Genesis 8:20, which mentions Noah sacrificing some clean animals and clean birds. However, as noted earlier, it is not appropriate to use this later verse to reinterpret a clear statement from the previous chapter. If Genesis 7:2-3 were unclear about the number of unclean flying creatures and Genesis 8:20 explicitly stated that an odd number of clean animals were brought onto the ark for sacrifices, then invoking this passage to support this point would be reasonable. However, neither of these conditions exist. Let's take a closer look at the text from Genesis 7. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. Genesis 7:2-3. Verse 3 clearly states that Noah was to bring 7 pairs of every kind of bird. This verse does not specify that this command was only for clean birds. In fact, the word birds in this context is more nuanced than the English translation might suggest. The Hebrew term translated as birds in the ESV encompasses all flying creatures, not just birds. Noah was instructed to bring 7 pairs of every type of flying creature, including bats and flying reptiles. This likely means that non-flying birds, such as ostriches and emus, were represented by just a single pair on the ark, assuming their ancestors were flightless. Why did God command 7 pairs of every flying creature and clean animal to be brought to Noah? The answer should not be limited to the discussion of sacrifices mentioned in Genesis 8:20. After all, Noah did not sacrifice any unclean flying creatures, and no one suggests that he sacrificed 6 pairs of each clean animal. Regardless of one's stance on the issue of sacrifice and the question of 7 or 14, there were clearly more clean animals and flying creatures on the ark than unclean animals. The Bible does not explicitly state the reason for this, but we can offer some reasonable speculations. First, clean animals were typically domesticated species that humans could use for work and food, especially after the flood, Genesis 9:3. Since there would be very little food available from the earth for Noah's family in the months immediately following the flood, they would likely rely on these more abundant clean animals for sustenance until they could cultivate and grow new crops. Second, it's possible that one of the reasons God sent 7 pairs of each flying creature was so they could help prepare the post-flood environment for other animals and humans as they eventually spread across the earth. Not only could flying creatures spread quickly and reach distant places, such as islands, but many birds also consume seeds and disperse them through their waste. A study concluded that seeds that pass through birds' digestive systems have a 370% higher survival rate compared to those that do not. Therefore, the abundance of flying creatures on the ark may have had less to do with sacrifices and more to do with preparing the post-flood environment to support animal and human life. But what creatures were left behind on Noah's ark? The answer is clearly fish and sea creatures. When God revealed his plan to destroy the world through the great flood, he told Noah, "I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created, and with them the animals, the birds and the creatures that move along the ground, for I regret that I have made them." Genesis 6:7. Interestingly, fish and sea creatures are not mentioned. Several passages within the flood narrative of Genesis provide clarity on whether fish were affected by the flood. Genesis 6:17 states, "I am going to bring flood waters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it." Everything on earth will perish. The emphasis here is on life on land. The flood would overwhelm those creatures. Logically, aquatic animals would not be harmed by more water. Additionally, it's hard to consider fish as having the breath of life in the way land animals do. Land animals and birds were chosen to be brought onto the ark, but fish and sea creatures were not. Genesis 6:19-21, 7-4. This suggests that sea creatures did not need the ark for survival. Genesis 7:20-23 lists the types of animals that perished, but sea creatures are notably absent. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Every living thing that moved on land perished: birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals, and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. The mention of dry land limits the types of animals affected. After the flood, God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and the livestock that were with him in the ark, and he sent a wind over the earth, and the waters receded. Genesis 8:1. Why didn't God remember the fish and sea creatures? Because they weren't destroyed like the other animals. It's interesting to note how the Jewish worldview categorizes animal life. The fifth day of creation includes the creation of fish and sea creatures as well as birds and flying creatures. So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Genesis 1:21. Land animals were created on the sixth day. Genesis 1:24. Based on these scriptures, the Jewish perspective divided animal life into three categories: sea creatures, flying creatures, and land animals. Of these three categories, only flying creatures and land animals were taken onto the ark. Fish and sea creatures were safe in the waters. Thank you for watching our video until the end. Please share this video with your loved ones so they too can learn about this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so we can be motivated to create more videos about the Bible. We hope to see you in the next video. May God bless and protect you always. Amen. The story of Noah's Ark has always been shrouded in deep mystery and has captivated the curiosity of many. What animals were brought onto the ark with Noah? Were any left behind? Could millions of species truly have been crammed into Noah's Ark for a year-long journey across the vast and turbulent sea? If this is your first time watching our video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our Bible-related content. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, I pray that you receive many blessings from God. Amen. Let's begin. While Genesis 6-7 does not provide a specific list of creatures that boarded the ark with Noah, these chapters do offer U.S. clues about their nature. The most significant biblical clue comes from the Hebrew word min, often translated as kind in English Bibles. Although min appears only 31 times in the Old Testament, these occurrences are enough to reveal a clear meaning. Just like in English, the context in which min is used sheds light on its interpretation. The use of min in Genesis 6-7 is particularly relevant to our purpose. In verses 19-20 of chapter 6, when God commands Noah to bring animals onto the ark, he says, "You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive." Why did God decree that both male and female of each species must be brought onto the ark? Ultimately, a vital function needed to be fulfilled, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. Genesis 7:3. The Hebrew word translated as seed is elsewhere clearly used to refer to offspring, e.g., see God's promises in Genesis 3:15 and 13:16. Therefore, Noah brought male and female onto the ark with the purpose of reproduction after the flood to preserve each species' lineage. This conclusion has profound implications for determining what these species might have looked like. At that time, individuals within the same species would have been reproductively compatible with each other. Today, if 2 individuals can produce offspring, it indicates that they are part of the same species. Furthermore, even if 2 individuals are classified as separate species, their ability to produce offspring through interbreeding suggests that they belong to the same species. This breeding test to determine species membership has its limitations. The inability to produce offspring is not sufficient evidence to classify 2 individuals as separate species. Since there are many biological reasons that may prevent breeding, all of these must be ruled out before using reproductive compatibility as a criterion for distinguishing species membership. Therefore, breeding is mainly useful as an inclusive standard, rather than an exclusive one, for identifying species. In the human world, people from all ethnic backgrounds have the ability to reproduce together, which classifies them as a single species with a common ancestry. No ethnic group is biologically incapable of reproducing with another. However, regardless of ethnicity, siblings who marry today are at risk of having children with birth defects, if they can have children at all. Sibling parents share too many identical genetic faults to produce healthy offspring. Yet, no one would argue that these siblings do not share a common ancestry. After all, by definition, they have the same parents. A similar phenomenon can occur in the animal kingdom. Thus, genetic incompatibility may prevent breeding from occurring, irrespective of any discussion about common ancestry or species membership. Nevertheless, based on positive evidence of successful breeding, the current species level is best estimated at the family level. While many species have yet to be tested for breeding capability, the results so far suggest that the family level is a good estimate of where species boundaries might lie in most cases. Therefore, when Noah brought 2 of every kind onto the ark, he may have only taken 2 representatives of each group of creatures that we would today label as part of the same family. People often assume there were only 2 of each animal on the ark because God told Noah that 2 of every kind of land animal would come to him, Genesis 6:20. But the text further states, "Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth." Genesis 7:2-3. Despite what some skeptics have claimed, this is not a contradiction. In God's original command, Genesis 6:20, he did not say that only 2 of each kind would come to Noah. It is perfectly reasonable for the Lord to expand upon his original statement by providing Noah with additional information. But here's the tricky part: did Noah bring 7 individuals or 7 pairs of each clean animal and flying creature? The Hebrew phrase translated as 7 pairs in the ESV literally means 7 shiva shiva shiva. Does this mean 7 pairs, 7 of each kind, or even 7 times 7? Very few hold the third position, which would imply that Noah brought 49 clean animals onto the ark, and there is no basis in the Hebrew text for this view, so we will focus on the first 2 options. 7 of each kind? Supporting the idea that only 7 clean animals boarded the ark is the uncertain translation of shiv, shiva, shiva, as 7 each. Additionally, the Bible reveals that after the flood, Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it, Genesis 8:20. So, if he took 7 of each kind onto the ark, he could have sacrificed 1 of each, leaving 3 pairs of each clean animal and bird to reproduce and fill the earth. This is the reasoning of Henry Morris in his commentary on Genesis. The 7th animal in each group clearly was intended for sacrificial purposes. While this suggestion is intriguing, it is not definitive, and we must be careful not to let our preference for certain ideas overshadow the text itself. For instance, it might be appealing to think of Noah bringing 7 individuals, 6 for reproduction and 1 for sacrifice, because it aligns with other 6-1 patterns found in the Bible, e.g., God creating in 6 days and resting on the 7th day, Genesis 1:1-3, and the Israelites being instructed to farm the land for 6 years, and let it rest for 1 year. For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops, but during the 7th year let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among your people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what is left. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove, Exodus 23:10-11. However, none of the passages about the animals boarding the ark explicitly state that an extra animal of each kind was brought for sacrifice. Proponents of this idea base their reasoning on a later passage, Genesis 8:20, but is their inference sound? How many animals of each clean and flying species did Noah sacrifice? The text does not tell us that he sacrificed just 1 from each kind. It simply states that he taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, Genesis 8:20. He might have sacrificed a male and a female from each pair. This would maintain the 6-1 pattern, 6 pairs for reproduction and 1 pair for sacrifice. Sacrificing a pair of each bird would align with the required offerings of Israelites, who could not afford a lamb for atonement. Leviticus 5:7 says, "Anyone who cannot afford a lamb is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons to the Lord as a penalty for their sin, 1 for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering." State that someone in this situation should offer 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons instead, which is what Joseph and Mary offered after Jesus was born, Luke 2:22-24. But nothing in the Bible explains that a 6-1 pattern was necessary for the clean animals and birds on the ark. Thus, Noah could have sacrificed several males from each clean kind, since most animals do not reproduce monogamously. Having fewer males than females could still allow for the earth to be quickly repopulated. Technically, interpreting 7-7 as merely 7 individuals does not align with the grammatical use of distributive words to express pairing. To clarify this point, consider how we use words like each, either, and neither in English. These are terms that refer to a group of people or things or to individual members within a group. Since there is no specific word for a pair, Hebrew sometimes uses repeated numerals. Therefore, to express the idea of 7 male-female pairs, a very natural way to do so in Hebrew would be 7-7, a male and his female, which essentially means 7 of each, a male and his female, 7 pairs of each kind. Supporting the view of 7 pairs is the fact that the Hebrew text literally states that Noah was to bring 7 pairs, specifying that they were to be a male and a female. If there were only 7 clean animals of each kind, then each male would not have a mate. Most English Bible translations reflect this understanding. Furthermore, many of the versions that simply state 7 include a textual note acknowledging that it could also mean 7 pairs. This formula differs from how the Hebrew text addresses the unclean animals in Genesis 7:2. Specifically, this verse does not say that Noah was to bring two, a male and a female. It simply states 2 shenayim. Shouldn't we expect some level of consistency here, since these numbers are found within the same verse? Hebrew uses 2 to refer to the unclean animals. So why does the same verse use 7 to refer to the clean animals? A similar expression can be found in a later verse. In Genesis 7:9 and 15, the text uses 2 shenayim of clean animals, and of animals that are not clean, and of birds, and of everything that creeps on the ground. 2 shenayim, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. They went into the ark with Noah. 2 shenayim of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. Genesis 7:8, 9, 15. These verses do not tell us how many animals of each kind were brought into the ark. Instead, they describe the manner in which the animals entered in pairs, a male and a female. And because each male had a female counterpart, it seems likely that there were 7 pairs of clean animals and birds brought onto the ark.